People will spend thousands of hours playing video games. They will grind to build their character's skills. They'll do difficult quests. They'll make a lot of in-game money. And what they don't realize is that if they applied the same intensity and systematic way of operating to the game of life, they would do pretty damn well. Viewing your life as a video game sounds strange, but it's a useful frame for thinking about how to operate and make good decisions as you progress through it. So let's dive in. We want to start by looking at you as the player. Now, in most games, before you even begin, you go through the character build mode, right? This is where you can customize your player, you can add certain attributes, and so on and so forth. Well, unfortunately, in this game, that doesn't happen. You skip the character build phase altogether. You do not get to view yourself and customize yourself before you enter the world. Instead, you start in a given area of the world with given conditions and specific traits. Some of these traits are unchangeable. Things like height, eye color, skin color. Beyond the hardwired, genetically coded traits, you are far more malleable than you think. There are limitless opportunities to customize your player throughout the game as you progress through it. And you should take advantage of this. Now we move on to player state. These are your core stats. There are 3 stats that make up your state as the player in the game. Those are health, energy, and then willpower and focus ability. Now, these all drain over time with activity and as time goes on, and they replenish every day, but not always to their maximum. If you get a bad sleep, then your health and your energy levels aren't going to completely replenish. These stats are interdependent. If your health is low, then your energy is going to drain faster. If your energy is drained, then your willpower will also be affected by that. Your willpower will be drained, it will be lower. Conversely, if your health and your energy bars are full, then you will likely have more willpower to do the difficult things that you want to do, to develop the skills, to go on quests in the game of life. Gosh, it's starting to sound cheesy. You get the idea. To win the game of life, you must pay more attention to these stats, to your state, than other players do. Fortunately, this isn't actually that hard to do because most players don't pay attention to them at all. They take little effort to improve their state and they suffer as a result. But if you can optimize your state, you can do so much more in the game. The player with twice as much energy as another player can put twice as much time and effort into something, whether it's pursuing an opportunity or developing a new skill. This is a massive advantage. Now, because state is so important, let's dive into these 3 stats in more detail, starting with health. Health is the master stat. It impacts every other part of your state. Neglect it and playing the game becomes difficult. Treat it with care and prioritize it, and everything else becomes much easier, and you can keep playing the game for longer. You already know this, but health is positively impacted by things like eating well, healthy food intake, both in terms of quality and quantity, restfulness and recovery. So you probably shouldn't be draining your entire energy bar or energy stat every single day. Exercise, supplementation, sunlight, low stress, all these things make up health. Then we have energy, your energy level. This is the second most important aspect of your state, and it is directly tied to health. Energy management is one of the most important skills in the game. If you can master it, you become an extremely powerful player. And like any other part of your state, energy capacity can and should be increased. And you can do this in 2 ways. First, by improving your health. As you get stronger and fitter, as you sleep better, as you eat better, your health improves. This has a direct impact on your energy capacity. The person with better health generally has a higher energy capacity than the person who has poor health. And of course, there are always exceptions. There's always someone who is clearly not healthy, but still manages to put in 12-hour work days like a machine. But they are the exception to the rule. And second, you can build your energy capacity psychologically, because a lot of players think that they have low energy when really they don't. They are just telling themselves that this is the case. It's this glitch in the game called energy inertia. Sometimes you simply need to do something and start moving around to activate the energy that you actually have. One more thing on this, do not underestimate the power of how you perceive yourself. If you view yourself as a high energy person, as a high energy player in this game, then you likely will be. But if you view yourself as a low energy person, so you will be. We then have willpower and focus ability. This is kind of a trifecta of willpower, focus capacity, and focus intensity. All things I've talked about before on this channel. Of course, these are closely linked to energy, which is closely linked to health. So you can see that everything is interdependent here. It is difficult to make hard decisions and to focus on deep work when you have low energy. At the same time, they are also distinct from energy because you can have high energy levels and good health, but lack the willpower and focus to get things done and to pursue opportunities and to develop skills. And so it's important that you develop this skill alone, this skill of willpower and focus. And the sooner you can do it in the game, the better, because willpower and focus ability is leverage in the game of life. It is the ultimate force multiplier. You can focus twice as well as somebody else. It puts you much further ahead. And over a span of 5, 10, 20, 30 years, the difference becomes immense. Let me just quickly break these three things down. Willpower, we will define as the willingness to make a decision that goes against the path of least resistance. It's choosing to avoid ice cream after dinner when you're trying to lose weight. It's choosing to do something productive instead of playing video games. We just went meta. And the way you build willpower is through consistent practice, through making hard decisions, getting 1% better every time, proving to yourself that you can override your instinctual desire to choose that path of least resistance. Next, we have focus capacity. Focus capacity is how long you can focus on a demanding task, and it is impacted by your energy level and your willpower. A person with a high focus capacity can stay on task for longer than the person with low focus capacity or lower focus capacity. Now, the way you build this capacity is through practice and progressive overload. So just doing a little bit more each time. Maybe you can only do 1 hour of focused work right now. Well, next week, try and do 1 hour, 10 minutes, and just slowly build that up. And then finally, we have focus intensity, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the intensity with which you do your focused work. Two players might have the same focus capacity, but one might get twice as much done in an hour than the other person, simply because they have a higher focus intensity. And just like capacity, this is something that can be developed through consistency and practice. Now that we've looked at you as the player and your state and traits, let's move on to something that is pretty important in the game, and it's where a lot of people get stuck, and that is choosing your path. The first 14 to 18 years when you're playing this game largely consists of tutorials. You're trying to get a sense of how the game works. You have no mental models, no wisdom, no knowledge, no real skills. You're just kind of like following what everyone else is doing. And many areas of the game are off limits to you, and for good reason. You cannot drive your parents' car at 5 years old because it might result in a game over for you. And in this game, unfortunately, game over is game over. As you progress through this tutorial stage, you gain more and more autonomy. You start to develop the skills of reason and logic. You start to see yourself as an independent player who has control over their decisions and outcomes. And you start exploring the open world a little bit more. You go off the beaten path, you experiment, you take some risks. But as you come out of this tutorial stage, you're faced with a burning question. What path am I going to take? See, there are multiple ways to play this game, right? Countless ways, in fact. You can play however you like. And there are many common, what I would call blueprint paths that you can take. The majority of players follow these blueprints, and there's nothing wrong with doing so. For example, one blueprint is to go to college, to study, get a degree in a certain field, and then pursue a career that pays pretty well. The benefit of this path is that it has been proven to work for others, and it'll probably work for you too. Another blueprint is to skip college altogether and learn a trade, like construction or plumbing. I won't list all the blueprints because there are too many, and then you have sub blueprints and so on and so on. The question though, this question of choosing a path is a difficult point in the game. Some players know exactly what they're going to do, others are not so sure. And many choose a path only to regret it later on. So there are a few principles to keep in mind here. And this applies whether you are coming out of the tutorial phase, like you're 18 years old, or you're older and you're just figuring out what to do next, or you want a change. The first principle is that there's no best path in the game. Every player is different. Every player has different traits, desires, and inclinations. Going against these can be a recipe for a lack of fulfillment. I think it was Charlie Munger, one of the OG players of this game, who said you should follow your natural drift. You should follow where the water is heading, where the river is flowing. In other words, lean in to your traits and your desires. Don't work against them. Don't suppress them, because otherwise you'll end up in a position where you've been working a job or a career path that is just not suited for you. And you wake up one day and you're like, this is not where I should be. This means you shouldn't pursue a path just because it's prestigious. That is usually a mistake. There's nothing wrong with pursuing a prestigious career like doctor, lawyer, consultant, if that's what's interesting to you and it's what you want to do. But there are reports from other players who have pursued these careers based on other factors like external pressures or being told this is the right path, and it hasn't been a good move for them. The second principle comes from Cal Newport in his book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. And it's that you become passionate about something as you become good at it, as you develop competency. Mistake a lot of people make is they try and follow their passion or pursue their passion. But it's a very hard thing to do because most people don't know what they're passionate about. Some people are passionate about things that do not have much economic value, and so it's hard to turn it into a career. And it just often doesn't work out for people. So it's better to pursue something that you are interested in. You don't need to be extremely obsessed or passionate, but you do need to be interested. And then as you become more and more competent, you will develop some sort of passion for it. The third principle is that comparison is the thief of joy and fulfillment, and that every path has its pros and cons. It is easy to second guess choosing a path in the game, especially when you see one person go down a certain path. Let's say it's a prestigious path and it looks attractive. Like they get paid to travel, they earn decent money, they wear a nice suit. And when you compare your path to theirs, you feel like perhaps you made the wrong decision and maybe you should switch. But what you forget is that that path has cons. The long hours, the lack of control over the schedule, the constant pressure to climb the corporate ladder, and the endless travel, which eventually becomes a frustration. Likewise, you see an entrepreneur who's building a business and he has autonomy, but what you don't see is the risks, the stress, and the debt that come with that path. So no path is perfect. Every path has its difficulties. You have to choose your heart. And the final principle, perhaps the most important one, is that no path is concrete. No path is set in stone for the rest of your gameplay, for the rest of your life. The path you choose early on in the game is not the one you need to follow forever. You can actually change it at any point. You can start working in a trade and you can become an entrepreneur later. Or you can start out building a business, realize it's not for you, and get a job that you enjoy instead. Now, another core component to the game of life is building skills. As you progress through a path or multiple paths, you ideally start building out skills. If you are strategic about this aspect of the game, you will put yourself well ahead of other players. Most players develop their skills on autopilot. They don't think about it at all. Now, skills are what you are specifically good at, right? So it could be something like writing or speaking, design, research, development, marketing, or it could be things like plumbing, electrical work, construction. There are too many skills to list out, thousands. There's no easy way to shortcut the skill development process in the game. You can't just pay to acquire skills instantly. There's no in-app purchase that will give you that. You can, however, speed skill acquisition up. There's always a more efficient way of learning something or doing something. You can hire a coach, you can pay for education, you can structure your learning in a certain way, and you should do these things. But you cannot avoid the grinding necessary to develop skills. Every good game has an aspect of grinding, and many players in the game of life, they avoid it. They take the path of least resistance with every skill they want to develop, and that's why you can gain an immense advantage simply by sticking with it. For example, how many people decide that they want to learn how to play guitar, they buy one, they pick it up, they play for a few hours, they learn a couple of things, and then they just abandon it, never to pick that guitar up again? I would say it's the majority of people. So by simply sticking with it, you put yourself in a unique class of people that have a deep and wide skill set. And skills are some of the most important things in this game. They give you optionality, more, different, and better ways to play the game. They unlock certain quests and paths and opportunities that wouldn't be available otherwise. And they also make you money, which again leads to that optionality. And also they're just kind of fun. Like, it's fun to grind. It's fun to see yourself get better and better at something. There's an intrinsic reward that comes from skill acquisition and development. The other thing you want to do in the game of life is build wisdom. The player with a high degree of wisdom has a set of mental models that enables them to think rationally and at a higher level than most other players. This helps them make better decisions. They consider the second and third order consequences of their actions. They don't give their armor to another player who's offering free armor trims. If you ever played RuneScape, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Wisdom helps you have better judgment about what to do and what to pursue and how to pursue it. Most importantly, it helps you avoid errors, because in this game of life, a significant error is more impactful than a significant success. An error, whether it's a misjudgment of risk or simply a poor decision that leads to a bad outcome, can put the player back significantly in terms of financial position, relationships, and stats like mood and fulfillment and health. Another key component to the game is that this is a multiplayer game and you should build relationships. Not only do relationships contribute to important stats like health and fulfillment, but they make the game worth playing. Eventually, when you're playing solo, things get boring and it feels unfulfilling and it's not as fun. Now, there are multiple types of relationships in the game. Some are shallow and transactional, others are deep and lasting. Relationships do add another layer of complexity and serendipity to the game. I'm not going to talk any more about this aspect of the game because it's a complex one and it's too much to cover in one video. Then the other aspect of the game, before I move on to some strategies and principles, is acquiring money. So like it or not, this game has a currency and it runs pretty much everything. Some players hate this fact and they choose to opt out altogether. Other players are extremely greedy and they take at the expense of others, but every player must make some amount of money to continue playing the game. The best way to think about money in this game is that it is optionality. Beyond a certain point, it doesn't really improve your game experience, and the obsessive seeking of it may actually degrade your experience. It may degrade things like fulfillment, mood, and health. But the more you have, generally, the more optionality you have. You can choose which area you want to live with less restrictions. You can pay someone to coach you to develop a certain skill. You have more options and more opportunities open to you. When you have little money, you have less optionality. There are certain things you just can't do. Now, most of us start in the game by trading time for money, and most of us also stay there, which is fine. But ideally, as you progress through the game, you want to build assets and find a way to trade your skills, your knowledge, and your wisdom for money, because that is leverage. Now, it's worth noting that in this game, gathering resources, gathering money is not a static thing. There exists this dynamic market. Some jobs are worth more than others because of the risks that they entail. Some jobs are worth more than others because they add more value to the market. At least that's the story. It's not always the case. And some jobs are worth more than others because of bad things like corruption and nepotism. But there's one universal truth in this game, and that is that if you can add value in the right way to this dynamic market, you will get rewarded. It's not a perfect system. You can add value without monetizing well and you won't get paid what you deserve. But if you can crack both the value addition and marketing equation, you will do well. As Charlie Munger says, you get what you deserve. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to share 4 strategies, principles, tactics, however you want to think about them for playing this game. The first is that grinding is foundational and essential to getting what you want. Every good game worth playing involves some level of grinding. I said this before. And when you adopt the right mindset and vision, grinding actually becomes enjoyable, at least most of the time. You get addicted to the feeling of progress. You get addicted to the reward cycle of making consistent improvements, of leveling up, of unlocking new skills and opportunities. If you ignore grinding or you do too little of it, you will find that the game becomes very difficult and unenjoyable. It will feel like something is missing. Now, the act of grinding has to be well defined. It is applied focus. You are not second guessing your actions all the time. You are just doing them day in and day out, doing the task to build the skill to get the result. The next principle is to leverage your player strengths and attributes. So you are unique and different to every other player. You want to use this to your advantage. Go where your natural drift is and leverage your strengths. You need to be asking yourself, what can I do better than most people? For me, it's writing and reading books. Like, I do it faster than I would say 99% of people, and I use this to my advantage as a writer and content creator because I can just do it fast and pretty good. Third principle is to hedge your risk. You should not venture out into the wilderness with everything on you, or you might lose it all. So when you're faced with an exciting opportunity that has a high reward, consider the downside. Some risks are just too much to bear. You want to mitigate that risk as much as possible because it can be catastrophic, or it can just set you back so much that it's very hard to build back from. And finally, this could be another topic altogether, but resource management is everything in this game. Manage your time, your energy, your money, and your relationships well, and you will put yourself ahead of most other players who pay no conscious attention to this skill of resource management. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit like and subscribe and leave a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you.